Biolit, enlighten, uncover, integrate, because life is never separate from knowledge.
Silver Blaze, by Arthur Conan Doyle. Chapter 1: The Horse and His Trainer. The story had gripped the nation. In late September 1890, all anyone was talking about was the disappearance of the great racehorse Silver Blaze and the tragic murder of his trainer. "We shall have to go, Watson," my friend Sherlock Holmes said to me as we sat down to breakfast one morning. "Go? Where to?" "To Dartmoor, to see if we can solve this Silver Blaze business." I shouldn't have been surprised. As England's greatest detective, it was only natural that Holmes should wish to take on this case, and so it was that an hour or so later, Holmes and I found ourselves in a compartment of a first-class carriage flying toward Exeter. Holmes spent the first half of the journey with his sharp, eager face buried in newspaper reports of the crime. Finally, he shoved these under his seat and turned to me. "It seems," he said, "that Silver Blaze was the expected winner at the Wessex Cup horse race next Tuesday. He is the nation's top racehorse, and the public had bet enormous sums of money on him. That means that rival stables would have been glad if he didn't compete." Of course, the owner of Silver Blaze, Colonel Ross, knew this, and he made sure the horse was well guarded at his stables at King's Pyland. The people in charge there were the trainer, John Straker, and 3 stable boys. Straker had worked for the Colonel for 13 years, 5 as a jockey and 7 as a trainer, and had always shown himself to be honest and dedicated. The stable boys are also, apparently, of good character. One of the lads sat up each night in the stables while the other 2 slept in the loft. Straker lived in a small villa about 200 yards from the stables. He had a wife, no children, and 1 maid-servant. King's Pyland is in a remote part of North Dartmoor. The nearest town, Tavistock, lies 2 miles to the east, and 2 miles west is Mapleton Stables. Apart from that, they are surrounded by wild, empty moorland. On Tuesday evening, when this happened, the horses had been exercised and watered as usual and the stables were locked at 9 o'clock. 2 of the lads walked up to Straker's house where they had supper in the kitchen, while the third, Ned Hunter, remained on guard. A few minutes after 9, the maid, Edith Baxter, walked over to the stables with Ned's supper, a dish of curried mutton. She took no water as there was a water tap in the stables and the rule was that the lad on duty should drink from that. The maid carried a lantern with her as the path ran through the open moor, which was very dark. When she was some 30 yards from the stables, Baxter saw a man appear out of the gloom. He was dressed like a gentleman in a tweed suit and a red silk cravat. He carried a heavy walking stick with a knob for a handle. He was dressed like a gentleman in a tweed suit and a red silk cravat. He carried a heavy walking stick with a knob for a handle. Holmes did not merely read the newspaper reports, he dissected them. Every testimony became data. Every footprint on the moor resembled a trace left in a laboratory culture. The disappearance of the racehorse Silver Blaze and the death of trainer John Straker were not, to Holmes, random events. They formed a system, a network of causes interacting like organs inside a living organism. The isolated stables at King's Pyland stood upon the moor like a fragile ecological niche. Horses, trainers, servants, even the watchdogs existed in a delicate balance. Then came disturbance, an unknown man in a tweed suit emerging from the darkness, carrying a heavy stick beneath the weak glow of Edith Baxter's lantern. In biology, such disturbances are often called a stimulus. A stimulus is any change in the environment capable of provoking a response in an organism. Holmes understood something profoundly scientific: living systems reveal themselves most clearly when disturbed. Fear alters behavior. Stress exposes hidden motives. Silence becomes evident, and so the moor of Dartmoor transformed into more than a crime scene. It became a living laboratory of observation, adaptation, and human instinct, where deduction followed the same principles that govern biology itself. Literature observes the soul, science observes the mechanism. Holmes teaches us that truth often lives where both worlds meet.